as Senior Consultant with Synergy HR. I've been with Synergy 2 years now. I have 25 years of HR experience, ranging from industries like retail, healthcare, professional services, engineering, environmental, oil and gas. So I've worked in a lot of different industries over the past 25 years. In this video, we're going to talk about the ROI of leadership development. I think a business leader might be feeling frustrated by not getting the results that they're hoping to see from their leadership team. Maybe it seems that their leaders are all moving in different directions. They might all be working really hard, but not focusing on the right things or not motivating or engaging their teams in the right way. So there could be a little bit of confusion and sort of feeling at a loss for how do I get this group, this team I've pulled together actually performing and motivating their teams and getting everyone pulling in the same direction so that we can start actually getting traction on our objectives. So if any of that really resonates with you as a small business owner, then I think you're really going to benefit from this video and gaining an understanding of the ROI of leadership development. When you've invested in leadership development, what you're going to see is that your team overall is more engaged, because when they have leaders who they can trust, who communicate well with them, who give them clarity in what the objectives are, how they're meant to achieve them, and who are accountable to themselves and to their team, you're going to have your whole organization who's really engaged, really motivated, working towards your long-term objectives. You're going to see a high level of engagement and passion. And again, this really comes from focusing on those leadership foundations, and having invested in those leadership foundations, you're going to start to see all of that investment start turning into results for your business. The emotion I might attach to that is one of, I want to use the word pride in a way, because you can actually see that, that the efforts of everyone are actually coming together in that real team atmosphere. And so there's that sense of winning for those that are sort of competitive in nature, actually seeing the plan executed and turning into the results that you were hoping for, or maybe even better results than you hoped for. I think that there's a sense of control, because you are actually helping the team to focus their efforts in the same direction. All leaders have different working styles. So when you don't leverage everybody's working style in the right way, or give everybody the same sort of direction to move in, or the same leadership competencies to focus on, you're going to get a lot of effort being made with not a lot of the results that you want. So I think that sense of satisfaction of actually seeing it all come together and start seeing those wins and start seeing the progress, I think that there's a lot of pride and satisfaction in that. There's a sense of when you don't feel that control, I think that there's a lot of stress and anxiety that comes from that. So when you start to see the pieces all falling into place, there's absolutely an immense sense of relief that, okay, things are actually going to turn out the way that we need them to. The first thing we're going to talk about is what leadership is and how it's important to your business. You want your leadership team to be guiding and directing your business in a positive direction. So leaders play a lot of different roles within a business. One might be mentoring, where they are sharing their expertise, sharing their experience. That could be formal or informal mentoring, where they, are matched up with somebody, or it could be just that they see somebody within the business who could benefit from their experience, and they're taking the time to share that experience with them and help guide them in their career. So mentoring is one aspect of leadership. The other is simply managing. So being a manager, planning, directing, controlling the work that needs to be done. So that's really the sort of the transactional piece of leadership is being mindful about building building a good plan, making sure it's staying on track, helping ensure that everybody has the resources that they need in order to actually execute on the plan. And then the last part of leadership that I see, and possibly one of the most important, is being a coach. So when you think about coaching, that's really about seeing the best potential in people and helping them to, I guess, be that best version of themselves. And so that could be within the role that they currently have or the role that they're pursuing in their future. So helping people to grow within what they're doing day to day, but then also, grow towards what they see for themselves and what the business sees for them in the potential for their future with the organizations. And again, doing all those things, the mentoring, the managing, the coaching, all happening at the same time, switching between those different hats. But really the purpose of the leadership team is to be guiding and directing the business towards the long-term vision. So when you assemble a leadership team, you need to make sure that you've got the right mix of people, first of all, and then also that you're supporting those leaders. I think that we expect often that the smartest or most ambitious person in the room is going to automatically become the best leader. And that's not always the case. Leadership in a lot of ways is a skill. It's not something that comes naturally to a lot of people. And it's one of the most challenging jobs. There's a lot of pressure, being that coach, being that mentor to people. There's a lot of expectation around that. And good leaders want to get it right. So they need a lot of support in order to be able to do that and build the skills that are going to help them do that effectively. As a business leader, I think what I would say your priority is ensuring that your leadership strategy is aligned with your business strategy. So I often see a lot of business owners, they'll spend a lot of time doing research, say, on introducing a new ERP system or a new CRM system. And there's a lot of time and focus invested on finding the right thing that's going to match with the business and the operations and all this sort of thing. But the same sort of focus isn't often applied to how do I want to support and develop my leaders. So I think as a business owner or small business leader, ensuring that you're thinking about the leadership competencies that are going to be important to achieving the goals that you need for your business, important to your operations, important to your vision, important to your purpose. Thinking about what are those skills and qualities that I need my leaders to be exemplifying day to day. And so being very purposeful about building your leadership development and your leadership expectations around those things that are going to align with your business strategy. Because again, you could get a lot of really motivated people who are doing their best and putting a lot of effort in, but if they're all doing their best in a lot of different ways, it's kind of like a rowboat full of people and everybody's rowing in different directions and at different speeds, and the boat is spinning around in a circle. Whereas if you can get everybody rowing in the same direction and at the same pace, you're going to go so much further. So I think, again, it's as a business leader, it's being purposeful about it. I think it's not something that many business leaders will pay attention to and be purposeful about and sort of cross their fingers and hope that it all works out. And sometimes it does. But could you imagine what happens if you actually plan it and execute it? I think you're going to find a lot better results. I can think of situations in which, the saying of people don't leave companies, they leave leaders, I think is very, very true. And conversely, people stay with leaders as opposed to companies. I think people become very loyal to good leaders or are quick to leave bad leaders. So examples where I've seen this, and I guess I can say I've seen it in widespread throughout an organization where leadership was not cohesive. So there was different leadership styles, competing priorities. Again, that sort of lack of real clarity from the top of the organization to say, these are the expectations, this is what we want to focus on, and this is what you're all expected to do. So with that lack of clarity and real direction from the most senior levels of the organization, it causes a lot of friction. And then that friction tends to weep into all parts of the organization. So everybody down to the front line is feeling that because, again, there's confusion, there's competing priorities, et cetera. On the flip side of that, I've seen where leadership teams have been purposeful about being very clear about, this is our 5-year plan, this is our 3-year plan, here's our 12-month plan, and building a roadmap that connects all those pieces, being aware of everybody's leadership styles. So, again, recognizing that some people are going to be maybe a more direct communicator than somebody else, and that's okay. But everybody needs to learn to work with the direct communicator and the one who's maybe not as direct. So laying that out on the table and making sure everybody has that awareness, understands how to work with each other in their different styles, having those clear objectives that then cascade throughout the business. And then everybody has that sense of control and calm because they all know what they're working towards. So again, I've seen that play out in organizations on both sides of it. And it's really, it does come down to that leadership aspect of, is leadership a focus? Is there a clear plan and are all leaders expected to follow the plan? Are they supported in following the plan versus no plan, no support for leadership, and then sort of the experience of chaos really is what it comes down to. And that's, chaos is uncomfortable and it's frustrating, and that loss of control leaves people feeling really uncertain. Now that we know what the role of leadership is in a business, we're going to get into what leadership development is. Leadership development can, come in a lot of different forms. There's informal, which would be self-directed learning. So reading books, subscribing to articles and blogs, podcasts, seeking out a mentor. So informally, a leader going out and building their own knowledge and skill base. Formally, obviously there's, you can take courses in person, virtually, et cetera. So you can seek out those formal leadership opportunities. And those also range too. You can do a 1-hour webinar, or you can do, multi-week, months, years of courses. I think it depends on sort of what your leadership aspirations might be. But when it comes to a small business, or what that might mean within a growing business, I think that self-directed learning is probably those individuals who are self-motivated and either want to be in leadership or are in leadership and recognize that that they need that support, but not everybody's that self-aware or motivated. So as I've talked about earlier, I think as a small business owner, being thoughtful about the type of leadership development that you want to offer to your leadership team or your aspiring leaders is really important. So thinking about the type of leadership development that's going to align well with your business objectives and the purpose and mission and values of your organization, I think is just a smart thing to do, to be purposeful about it, as opposed to hoping that, your people are doing the self-learning or taking the courses that are just going to help everything fall into place. Situations or scenarios that some leaders may think are development but aren't, are team building. So taking your team out for, a golf game or bowling, those are great team development opportunities and team, getting to know your teams on a personal level, but that's not really leadership development. Those things do help build trust and relationships as a leader, but that doesn't help you develop really as a leader. Public shaming is not leadership development. Using a meeting or a public venue as an opportunity to point out somebody's shortcomings as a leader is not leadership development. Leaving somebody to sink or swim is not leadership development. Again, assuming the smartest or most ambitious person in the room is going to spontaneously combust into the best leader that you've ever seen, that's not leadership development. So leadership development is at its best purposeful. It is designed to align with your business strategy. It is designed to bring out the best in the leadership team that you have selected. so that you're going to see the results that you need for your business and that your overall team is engaged and motivated by the leaders that you have. The time needed for development, almost in like a sports analogy kind of way. If you think about a hockey team, how many hours a week do they practice before they actually play a game, right? So leadership development could be considered or thought of in a similar way. So if you are thinking about leadership development as being key to the success of your business, then you want to make sure that that's a priority and that time is allocated for that. So maybe it's a monthly, 1 hour check-in with each leader to talk about, what areas are you struggling with and how can I support? Built into that could also be I want you to take 2 hours each week to be purposeful about whatever aspect of leadership you want them specifically to be working on. Quarterly leadership development sessions. I think it's going to be different for each business, but the point is that if you want to be able to go back to the sports analogy, show up to the game and play your best game and know we've got a plan, we know our plays, everybody's on board, and everybody does what they're supposed to do. It's the same with leadership. If you have the plan and you want everybody to show up when it matters and do what they need to do, you have to give them the time to prepare, to practice, to build those skills. An example I can think of where there was very purposeful and intentional leadership development is I worked in an organization where we had an individual who was in a leadership position, but wasn't necessarily exemplifying all of the, characteristics that were expected of leadership in that organization. So that individual was offered the opportunity to do a leadership self-assessment, and that self-assessment takes information from that person's leader, their peers, their direct reports, et cetera. So it's sort of a panel of people give input on that person's leadership style. And then the person themselves also does the same assessment. And what it gives them is sort of a map that shows the difference between how they perceive themselves versus how others perceive them. And the greater the distance between how they perceive themselves in a certain aspect versus everybody else shows them where they need to potentially work on those skills. So whether it's communication, whether it's being accountable, et cetera. And this individual, number one, took the step to say, yes, I want to do this assessment because I'd like to improve. And I think that shows, number one, the organization wanting to invest in this leader, and then also this leader willing to build their self-awareness. And then actually taking that information and then building a plan around that and executing on it. And again, the organization helping that person to do that and building a plan, checking in on it, and actually seeing it through. So I think that's a really good example of leadership development for one individual, but it was important for the whole organization as well. I believe that that individual did take that feedback and made efforts to improve a lot of those things. And I think the team did experience some positive changes from that. I think over time, it's still, we all have the tendency to sort of revert back to some of our behaviors. So there was, a bit of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But overall, over time, those 2 step forward, 1 step back kept happening. And I think that individual did dramatically improve their ability to effectively lead their team. Now let's talk about the true value of leadership development in your business. Good leadership development directly translates to bottom line results. And I've already given some sort of analogies around either the hockey team or, you've got a bunch of people in a rowboat and rowing in different directions and at different speeds and things like that. So when you have an effective leadership team who they have all the skills, they have all the support, they understand the business strategy, and they know how to support their teams in executing on it, you can't help but see the direct connection between their guiding and direction to the business, to their teams, and actually achieving the bottom line results. To me, it almost seems like I don't know, I don't want to use the term, but no-brainer. It seems so simple to me that if you actually have a leadership team who can build the plan and make sure that the plan is executed on, you're naturally going to see the bottom line results. You're going to see, whatever those targets are, whether it's reducing expenses, increasing revenue, whatever those key performance indicators are for your business. If you have the right leadership team in place to execute on those plans and keep your team motivated and focused towards those goals, it's going to come into place. You're going to see those results happening. I think one of the best ways I've sort of seen all of this come into play and seen that leadership team, effective leadership team, achieve not just what they set out to do, but far exceeded it, where from the very top of the organization, there was a very clear understanding of what the goals were, what the long-term vision was. And a strong leadership team was assembled. Everybody was given the support and resources to ensure that they could lead their teams well. And everybody was on the same page. And everybody respected their different leadership styles and everything else, but everybody was rowing in the same direction. And then as you took that high level, here's our goal. So in 5 years, we're going to be a $1 billion company, for an example. So what do we need to do to get there? Okay, well, finance, leader, these are the objectives that you and your team need to execute on. HR, operations, marketing, etc. So at each level, organizationally, at the highest level, you had those goals, and then those were cascaded down and reported back up. So it was this very clear execution. And that came down to the leadership team working cohesively, the leadership team having the support that they need, the leadership team getting the development that they needed, specific to the types of goals that they and their teams needed to execute on. So that was one of those examples of a very purposeful and mindful way of leveraging that leadership team that was brought together. So for a team like that to actually succeed in achieving what that higher level goal was, each of those leaders needed the investment of development in their development. So myself, for example, as part of that leadership team, I was given the opportunity to go to Queen's University and do, I think, 2 or 3 separate week-long sessions that were focused on leadership development. And they were incredible courses. It was like drinking from a fire hose at times, but I came back equipped with so many new tools and ways in which I could help my team succeed. And I wasn't the only one who got that opportunity. Everybody at that level of leadership had those same opportunities to do the same type of development. So we were getting the same support, getting the same investment in our leadership skills. And that is a key part of what helped that team achieve the goals that we did. Investing in leadership development in terms of attracting and retaining talent, I think there's 2 arms of that. So first, attracting and retaining the best leaders. So when you want to bring a leader into your organization or develop a leader within your organization, investing in their development is going to ensure that you're attracting and retaining the best leadership talent into your organization. Speaking from personal experience, when an organization has invested in my leadership development, I was much happier to stay in those jobs longer because I knew that they believed in me enough to make that investment in me. So as a leader, that investment was really important. The other arm of that is when you invest in good leaders, you're going to be able to attract and retain the best talent overall. As I've said earlier, people leave leaders or people leave managers. They don't leave companies. There's been a lot of situations where I think employees are happy to stay with a really great leader despite maybe the organization not performing at its best. But if they have a leader who invests in them, cares about them, communicates well with them, has built trust with them, they feel safe there and they want to stay there. So I think that in terms of attraction and retention of the best talent for both leaders and you're thinking about your team as a whole, it's worth its weight in gold because as I think most business leaders know, attracting and retaining talent is one of our biggest challenges. And especially in today's market, I feel like it's so competitive. So if there's specific talent that you're out there searching for and you finally get that person, you don't want to lose them because you haven't invested in good leaders. Leaders who've been given the opportunity to really hone and develop their skills in, I guess, hand in hand along with being given the autonomy to really take charge of whatever part of the business that they're responsible for, I think have a better seat at the table or a better voice at the table to say, this is what I'm seeing in the business, and I think we need to pivot and go in this direction, or we need to do more of this and less of this. And I guess empowering those leaders to be able to make those assessments, bring that forward, make the case, and build a plan, and then let them run with it. I think as a business owner, somebody who can't do all the things and be all the things to all the people and have all the ideas and have the time to execute on them, you want to build a team that you're going to be confident in, who can raise their hand and say, I see a problem over here, or I see an opportunity over here, and you want to trust them to confidently bring that forward and help you do the best things for your business. A leadership team that's been given the opportunity to develop sort of as a cohort, we'll say, and who have been given the same opportunities and have the same understanding of what's important to the business, how they need to execute, how they need to lead their teams in executing on the plan, will be that much more capable of pivoting when they need to. So when the market suddenly shifts, a team that is working well together, is already cohesive, already understands what the plan and the ultimate goals are going to be able to evaluate quickly. Okay, the landscape has changed. Our roadmap had us going this way. Now we need to take a detour. What does that look like? When the team already communicates well, when everybody already has that sense of accountability, when everybody can trust each other and know, okay, well, if Bob says he's going to do this, I can trust that he's going to do that. I don't have to double check. I don't have to go and do that work for him because I don't trust that he's going to do it. A team that functions at a high level like that is going to be able to pivot way faster than one who, if they don't trust that Bob is going to do what he's expected to do, or that he's even going to show up for the meetings. You know, when you have that sort of distraction and noise in the background of a leadership team, it kind of grinds things to a halt. So a team like that isn't going to pivot well. They're going to panic when something goes off the rails because they don't trust each other enough to be able to come together and problem solve. There was, a period of time when oil and gas, for example, became very volatile. So organizations were forced into tough decisions around how to cut costs when all of a sudden the price of oil and gas plummeted dramatically, and all of our business models were built on gas being a certain price, and it was no longer at that price for a long period of time. So having a leadership team in that position where they had to make really, really tough decisions that were going to impact their people that they cared about, was an extreme challenge. And I worked with a team who, we had to do the awful task of those rounds of layoffs and determine who were those people to be impacted. How do we want to communicate that? How do we keep the remaining parts of the team feeling whole when, we unfortunately had to say goodbye to a lot of really great people. And a leadership team that comes together in times like that to help each other make those decisions and, come out the other side of it in a way that felt, I guess, as good as it could under the circumstances, and had the bottom line results that were needed, I think was an exceptional challenge, and the team did it really well. And a big part of that was, holding each other up in those times that were tough. And again, that comes from a leadership team that has a high level of trust and good communication and accountability. But it was also, focusing on the numbers, how much was necessary, and thinking long term about, if we cut too much, how are we going to climb back out of this when things pick up again? And so being really thoughtful about the longer term impacts of these decisions and what recovery looked like. And in the end, I think that organization performed ultimately really well because they did have a good plan of how are we going to manage these initial tough decisions, and then how are we going to recover, and at what time, and what are all the elements that need to be sort of in place in order for us to start doing that rebuilding. And again, good plan, good leadership team followed through, and ultimately the organization still thrived. I think that's a really good example of how a leadership team can deal with that sudden need to pivot, drastic decisions that had to be made that were not easy decisions to be made, but they did it, they supported each other, and ultimately I think it really ended well, all things considered. I hope that by this point, you're seeing clearly why it's so important to invest in your leadership teams. I hope that it's obvious that bringing together a group of people that you trust implicitly with helping you achieve the goals of your business, and not just bringing that team together, but investing in that team to make sure that they can do their best work, they can lead their teams in doing their best work, is so critically important. I hope that you've had the realization that leadership is a skill that can be developed, that not everybody just is naturally a good leader. There are some people out there like that. However, a lot of us need help. Leadership is a very, very challenging role to have. And there's a lot of aspects of it that we need support on as leaders. And having that investment in us as leaders is going to not only help our teams, but help your business thrive. If you've gone through the effort to find and build a leadership team that you think is going to make the difference in your success, you can't afford not to invest in them. In the next video, we're going to talk about when and how to establish an HR presence in your business.